Good evening. Thank you all for joining us so much. Looking forward to spending the next just over an hour with you all. Feel free to put your video on if that works for you. Feel free to have it off if that works better. We totally understand that folks joining programs from home, sometimes there's a lot of chaos in the background. So whatever works for you, that would be great. We love seeing people's faces, but again, we know that there's a lot going on in people's homes or wherever you might be joining us from. I am joining you here from the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles County. We're back in the office, not all day, every day, but we are here. So we're going to get started at about 5 past the hour. But yeah, I just wanted to bring your attention to this amazing picture of an ant. Yep, it's an ant that's dressed up as a spider, specifically maybe for Halloween. And this is a photo by Alex Wild, does amazing ant photography, like literally ant photographer extraordinaire. So if you could, in the chat box, it'd be great if folks could, if folks could put their name and pronouns, their neighborhood in LA or wherever you are calling in from. And maybe if you want to share an interesting or funny story about ants, that would be awesome too. Okay, we've got Sophie, she, they pronouns in Rancho Palos Verdes. Oh, my share screen went off. Let's go back to that. Okay, who else do we have here? Sophia said, ants are cool, but I don't have stories. Just get excited when they see large ants. I get excited when I see large ants too, especially here in Southern California, because very likely it's going to be a harvester ant. We've got Ethan Bandy, he, him from Whittier. Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm coming in from Koreatown, and I was out doing some ant collecting in Arizona, in Tucson, and a harvester ant bit a gentleman. And apparently harvester ants can have a very strong, painful reaction in the man's groin area. And I got to witness this. And I also got bitten on the ankle. There were a lot of harvester ants around. And it did hurt, but it did not have the same reaction. So maybe that's something that we can talk about later, Terry. Like, do we know why ants cause men to have more of a reaction than women? We've got Brenda Reese here from Eagle Rock. As a kid in Minnesota, used to watch ants for hours at their ant hills. Thank you. Annette and Alexis, she and he, they're from West LA, Rancho Park area. We got Samantha Hubbard, she, hers, in Hesperia. And I got some more coming in. Joanne Lamb, she, her, from El Monte. Sydney, she, her, from Lakewood. And we got Myra and daughter Scarlett, they're in Hawthorne. They don't often see large ants, but see Argentine ants and love them when they swarm the house in the summer. Not everyone loves them when they swarm houses in the summer, so that's interesting to hear that you are interested and into that. We've got Cindy from Riverside. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Let's see. You don't love them swarming. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, I had a friend in Riverside who I was looking after her dog, and I was going every couple of days, and I came over one day and the giant bag of dog food had been completely inundated with Argentine ants. And I was like, oh no, this is like $80 worth of dog food, and I like had to sift it out and like put it in a bowl with water around it. So it was a big disaster, but I saved the dog food. The dog had food, and there were a lot of dead ants, unfortunately. Okay, we've also got Tim Alexander joining us from Temple City near Rosemead High School. Started collecting honey ants during field entomology class at UC Riverside. Whoop, UCR. I have a degree in entomology from there too. Cool. And we've got Marcia, who is in elementary school. And ooh, you got pushed back during and when you're in elementary school, lost your balance. It was kind of a joke, so it wasn't like a really mean thing. And then you ended up sitting in a pile of red ants. That sounds really intense. Glad you're okay. We've got Amanda Shipman with 2 kids in Lake Balboa. Sophia says, funny, haven't seen any harvester ants in the Palos Verdes. Closest I've seen them is in San Pedro or Manhattan Beach. Marcia, it's okay if you can't speak. We are glad that you're there from the Canoga Park Library and able to chat with us. Did I miss anyone? Emily in East LA. Her area has so many ants. Spent many summer nights having to protect eyes from ants. Ooh. Wow, so cool. Thanks, everyone. We are right on time, and what we're going to do now is I'm just going to give you an overview of what we're going to do tonight. So we've done awesome chat introductions. You're going to have an introduction from each of us, a little bit of an icebreaker to get us all in the mood for ants. We're already in the mood, but like we're going to be even more in the mood for more ant info. And then we're going to get to hear from the Harvester Hunt project leaders. We can have a little bit of ant trivia and happy hour, and then time for questions and answers. You can ask questions in the chat as we're going. Sam will help to keep track of those, and we will be answering all your questions. All the things you want to know about ants, you'll hopefully get answered tonight. Answered tonight. We got more puns coming at your way too. Okay, so icebreaker. If you could be an ant, which one of these ants would you want to be? Would you want to be the turtle ant, the trapjaw ant, or the honeypot ant? Again, all these photos are by the amazing Alex Wild. If you don't know about their ant photography, go check out their website. Sam will put it into the chat box. Sophia says, hard choice. I know, they're all so cool. I've eaten a honeypot ant. That was fun. Different experience. Rosalind says, would want to be a turtle ant. Anyone else? Ethan also wants to be a turtle ant. They look defensive and bulky. So we got a lot of people into the turtle ant. Looks cute. I'd like to be one. Oh, Sophia's coming out strong. Myra, like honeypot ant all the way. They look cute. Got some more votes for turtle ant. I think turtle ant, honeypot ant. No one wants to be a trapjaw ant. Turtle ant, they are slow and chill like Eeyore. Good one, Terry. Marcia wants to know what more information about them before they make a decision. Totally, I like that. I like your research style. Awesome, awesome. Turtle ant looks like it has street cred. Yeah, it definitely looks like it can protect itself. Against many predators, blocking up their whole entrance to their nest. And also imagine if you're the one of the ants that has that. Not all the ants in the colony has the kind of like manhole cover. So we got team turtle ant. Wow. Okay, that was fun. Thanks for playing along, everyone. So we're going to do some quick introductions of ourselves, and then we'll jump in to Terry and Nadia giving their presentations and telling us all about the Harvester Ant Project. Hi, everyone. My name's Leela Higgins. I use she or they pronouns. I am a co-senior manager of the community science program here at the Natural History Museum. And I also studied entomology at UC Riverside. I am not an ant expert, but I have general insect knowledge. That's me. Nadia, over to you.
Hi, my name is Nadia. Pronouns are she, her. I am an undergraduate biology student at Cal State Fullerton, and I am running this project with the help of my mentor, Terry, who will introduce himself next.
Hi, I'm Terry Mcglinn. I'm the director of the CSU Desert Study Center, which run the field station out on Isaacs Road, and I'm a professor at CSU Dominguez Hills.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sam. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a community science coordinator at the Natural History Museum of LA and super excited to hunt ants with all of you. Thanks.
And Sam is also here helping with tech. So if you have any tech issues or tech questions, you can direct message them and they will help you out. Yay, Sam. Sam's also going to be all up in the chat. So if you have general questions, Sam will be there too. Okay, over to both of you, Terry and Nadia.
Yes, thank you so much. I just want to say thank you to everyone joining us tonight. First of all, your interest in Harvester Hunt really means a lot to us. And we, of course, couldn't do it without you, so we really appreciate you being here. Get right into it. Next slide, Leela. So coming into this whole thing, you might be thinking to yourself, ew, I don't like ants. They're bugs. Bugs are gross. They're pests. All that good stuff. And while I totally get it, I'm here to change your mind and share just how important they actually are to California ecosystems and that they're not pests. Just a little bit of background. Harvester ants are native to California and populations in the state are struggling due to the many symptoms of urbanization. Some of the threats they're currently facing include habitat loss and pesticide exposure, but by far the worst is competitive exclusion, by the Argentine ants. And now let me give you a little heads up. Argentine ants are the bad guy here. Not only are they giving harvester ants a hard time, but they're also the ones that invade your kitchen during the summer, someone mentioned, and take over your picnic lunch when you don't keep an eye on it. So they're what you think of when you think of ants being pests, and they're also probably what you imagine in your head when you think of ants, because they are everywhere. Argentine ants are native to South America, but have earned a global invasive status because they survive incredibly well just about everywhere, especially in urban settings. They're drawn into cities and ultimately take up a lot of what little resources are left for native harvester ants. So getting back to the harvester ants, why should you care? They're incredibly ecologically important for a couple of reasons. First off, they're an essential member of the food web. A ton of animals eat these things. For example, frogs, toads, lizards, birds, and even other insects. And with harvester ant populations struggling, we've already seen some concern for some of the species that depend on them, like coast-horned lizards, for example, which are now labeled as a California species of special concern. These lizards are also native to California, like harvester ants, and more than 90% of their diet consists of ants, particularly harvester ants. That basically means that if harvester ants disappear, so will coast-horned lizards. Another reason why harvester ants are so important is because they are seed dispersers. And if someone could click that video so we get a little action shot of them. We usually think of pollinators being really important for plant reproduction, but harvester ants play a crucial role in their success too. Harvester ants harvest seeds from things like grasses to take back to their nest. They eat them, ultimately transporting them away from their mother plant and allowing their populations to spread. Next slide, please. Now, in order for us to be able to help harvester ant populations, we need to get an accurate sense of where they can still be found, and that's ultimately the goal of Harvester Hunt. We want to be able to answer the questions, where do harvester ant populations currently reside alongside Argentine ant populations, especially in urban areas. Excuse me. And what are the properties of locations that support harvester ant populations? With your help in searching them out, we'll hopefully be able to get some answers. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, Harvester Hunt is a community science effort, which is where you all come in. You'll all be able to help us answer our questions as accurately as possible by submitting photo observations of harvester ants in LA County or the LA metro area to iNaturalist. At the end of the observation window, we'll take all the observations and create a visualization of harvester ant presence in the region using GIS and remote sensing. This will ultimately allow us to evaluate the environmental factors that predict harvester ant presence in urban settings and allow us to also make a comment on how we can possibly help out their population. Next slide, please. Hunting down harvester ants might sound a bit involved, but you could technically participate without even intending to. Whether you're going out on a hike over the weekend or just out and about doing your daily tasks, there's a decent chance that you could see them by accident, so it's pretty low effort. Whether you see them by happenstance or by searching for them, the next step would be to take a picture and note your GPS location, which you'd then submit to a social network for biodiversity observations called iNaturalist. And that's basically it. Once you submit your photo to iNaturalist, you've contributed a data point to the project. Next slide, please. So have I convinced you that harvester ants aren't just creepy crawlies? And do you now feel ready to get involved? Next slide. You may understandably be a little intimidated by having to identify harvester ants on your own, but trust me when I say you'll be surprised how easy it is. Harvester ants are super distinctive in California for a couple of reasons. One of the biggest tells is their size. They're just about the biggest ants that we've got around here at around 1/4 to a 1/2 inch in length. And because of this, if you see an ant that's bigger than your typical backyard ant, aka an Argentine ant, there's a pretty good chance that you found a harvester ant. Harvester ants are also easily recognizable in addition to their size because they've got these disproportionately large oblong heads. I believe we're supposed to be one slide back, I just realized. We could, thank you. So yes, we can see the label now where their length is demonstrated. They've got these disproportionately oblong heads and are usually orange, red, or brownish black in color. Now we can scoot to the next slide. Thank you. So now here's a pretty good side-by-side comparison to show you just how different harvester ants look from Argentine ants. Harvester ants are a lot bigger, have kind of an ovular head, and while they may look the same size as Argentine ants due to the different photo scales that we have here, harvester ants are going to be significantly larger and chunkier. Don't worry if you're nervous about forgetting which is which. We've provided a handy harvester hunt handbook on our website, which includes an ant ID guide, among other helpful information. And guess what? If you're still not sure what species you found, you can submit your observation to the project anyways, and we'll identify it for you. Next slide, please. So say you want to spend some time looking for harvester ants with intention. Where should you look? You can potentially see harvester ants just about anywhere in LA. However, some microhabitats they are most commonly spotted in include dry open areas that are weedy and warm. Some examples of this kind of environment include urban dirt lots, which you can see in the photos that we've got on the slide there, the edges of dirt roads or sandy areas. Next slide, please. All right, so you were successful, you found some harvester ants, and you want to take a decent photo, which might be the only aspect of participating that might be a bit frustrating because they move so fast and all over the place. But it doesn't have to be frustrating. You can keep them still long enough for a photo by bringing some kind of food, maybe stale breadcrumbs or something like that, and giving it to them as a distraction. Another aspect that makes great photos is bringing objects like coins to put down for scale, and also attempting to get them on a light background to help them stand out in the photo. Now, if you saw the very professional ant portraits by Alex Wild at the beginning of the presentation and are thinking you need to take photos like that, definitely not. This photo on the right that I've included here was sent to me by a friend. She took this with her iPhone camera in Glendale, and it's basically exactly what we're looking for. Next slide, please. So at this point, you've got your beautiful ant photos and you're ready to submit them to iNaturalist. If you don't already have an account, you'll need to make one, but it's super easy. It only takes a couple minutes. Once you've logged in, or once you have your account and you've logged in, search for the Harvester Hunt iNaturalist project and join it, or you can click on the link that will be included in the chat, I presume. You'll then notice an upload button in the upper right-hand corner, so you'll click on that, fill out the necessary information, making sure to include Harvester Hunt under the project, hit submit, and you are done. And that's all you have to do. It's really that simple. You can submit as many observations as you'd like, and I'd highly encourage you to do so because we'll be offering prizes to those with the most submissions by November 1st. And that is all. That's all I got for you. Super simple, and I'm really excited to have you all participate in this project with us.
Thank you so much, Nadia. We are going to go into a kind of like quick fire burning questions moment. We have more time for Q&A at the end, but let's do some kind of burning questions right now. And you can let us know. You can put the question in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask. Oops. Well, that's the trivia next, so we'll just leave that up as a nice, beautiful picture in the background. So I'm seeing some questions. Okay. Rosalind says, how many observations would you like from a single site?
Want me to take that? Oh, Nadia's muted, so I'll get that. How about that?
Yes, I'm sorry, it was not working. I think this is a question for you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I mean, so I would say if we want to know that the ants are at a particular place, then that's useful. And so we're really interested in where they are and where they are not on a fine spatial scale. So if it's the same backyard, knowing that they're in that backyard matters, but knowing that they're there at different times of day or active in different times of year isn't as critical for us. We just want to know that harvester ants live in a place. But let's say you're in a public park or going on a hike and you see them along the trail or in different places in the park, then all those locations will be useful. So in other words, if it looks like a different place, you know, when you're in, you know, on the map in an iNat at a fine spatial scale, then that will matter because the analysis that we'll be doing will be looking at using remote sensing how much vegetation cover there is and how wet the soil is, and how urbanized it is. And those things vary on a scale of potentially 10 or 20 meters. And so if you have two nests that are 20 meters apart, that actually could be useful.
Myra has an excellent question in the chat. Mayra, I apologize if I mispronounce your name. Is there any key details that should be included in our observations, such as time of day, temperature, precipitation?
I don't honestly think that's critical. If you'd like to include, I think in general with iNaturalist, because it's a database that, you know, it's, you know, anybody can access this data on iNat and do research with it. And so the more data you can provide, that's valuable. Although we're not necessarily seeking that kind of information, because in theory, time of day and temperature come with the metadata when you upload the photo that is embedded. And so we should be able to get that off the site. And if we really want to dig into precipitation history, then we could, in theory, get that, do data sciencey stuff and get that down. So we're really just focused on engaging with folks and being like, can you find these ants? And so if you're excited about documenting more information about how and where these ants are and what's happening, that's great. But our central question for this project is to find where they are, and how some places have them and some places don't. And so if they are in more rainy places, then that would inform us. But the fact that it just rained, harvester ant colonies tend to live for many, many years. And so we just want to know that the colony exists there.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little something to that too. If you'd like to add those details and don't want to add them in yourself, I am almost positive it is when you join the Harvester Hunt project on iNaturalist, it asks you to give permission for us to get that information from the photo you submit. So just give us permission to do that. We'll be able to data.
Yeah, on iNaturalist, every time you add an observation, it requires date and time, who the observer is, so in your linked account, and location. So it won't let you really upload if you haven't filled out those categories. There was another question from Sophia of how long is the observation period? I saw on one slide it said October 30th to November 1st. And is that just for the kickoff, or how long do you want us to be looking for ants in the long run?
Right. Yeah. So the kickoff, when we look at the number of listed projects, will be the number of new harvester ant record, or number of native ant records in this project, for which we'll give prizes at the end of this period, will be that little period. But my laboratory is going to be continuing this project, for the next few years, because the more information we get, the more we're able to fill in more gaps. We're going to get lots of information. And so, right now, fall is creeping in, and with the rainfall and the hot weather, we should have plenty of harvester ants for the next few days up through the weekend. But ultimately, I'm really interested in using this to learn a lot more about harvester ants in the coming years, because the people involved in this project, hopefully, you're going to go different places. And so it's going to take a couple years for people doing this project to really fill in these gaps. I've been doing this for the last, 6 months. Whenever I see one, oh, let me take a picture. And so hopefully as many of us will be doing that as possible. So the more detailed of a map, the more we go. And also, I really want to get coverage in areas like East LA and South LA, which means I'm going to be going to schools and reaching out to them. And that's going to take time to build, these relationships and get people excited about this. And so it's not like a real flash thing. That said, we're going to get enough data from this, these next few days for us to analyze and get a coarse picture of what's going on. And we'll be sure to share with you what we find.
Awesome. There's another question from Bettina. So essentially, you just want cell phone photos and not macro photos like the ones that they take with their camera and upload when they get home. Question?
Yeah, definitely. The photo that we included on that, or the example that I had been sent by a friend, is a perfect example. The lighting doesn't have to be perfect. The clarity doesn't have to be perfect. As long as you can see the general shape and it stands out, then I think that's sufficient.
Yeah. So I like the idea that we could engage, all kinds of people. Even if you just have a cell phone, you could still tell a harvester ant from a non-harvester ant. And you could tell, oh, that's a velvety tree ant or a carpenter ant, probably, depending on the photo. But if you are doing macro photography and you're taking great photos of ants, please do upload those, because that will allow us to identify them to species, especially if it's not a harvester ant, because we're still interested in where other native ants are occurring as well. That's good, useful information. So if you're doing macro photography, please include them. That's great, but that's not at a minimum what's needed for the project. What I like about this is that anyone with a cell phone can take a photo of a harvester ant, and then that'll be useful data.
Speaking of identification, earlier Timothy asked about harvester versus carpenter ants. Terry, you answered in the chat, but I think it's a great question for the rest of the people here too. You're the answer.
Yeah, so there's so in LA so essentially harvester ants are one of the big chunky ants that you see, and there's a couple kinds of other big chunky ants, and so the other ones are carpenter ants, which can be the same size or maybe even a little bigger, and also then there's velvety tree ants as well, and so visually you can tell harvester ants because well, they tend to have like this bigger chunkier head, and also their butt is connected to the rest of their body by two segments rather than one, which is what velvety tree ants and carpenter ants do. We're still interested in seeing your carpenter ant records as well, though. But you know, once you start looking at a few photos of them, you'll be like, oh, I can see how those are different from one another.
So
But again,
if
it's,
I may
yeah.
ask my question again, I was asking about the macro lens photos, mainly because of the GPS that your phone will capture as you're photographing. But I have a macro lens, which would get you more detail. I think I can set up my camera to give GPS for each photo. But if I can't, it's not as easy to give exact GPS locations, say if I'm in a wilderness park for each colony.
Right. So for our specific project, the value is the specific GPS location of where that photo is taken, and so you know, I mean, photos of ants are great, but in terms of how yeah. So for the purpose of our project, like the way we're only going to be, when we go through the methods of the analysis, we'll only be able to use photos that have those GPS information that's tied with it from the cell phone. Yeah.
And so someone just asked a good question. Are you more interested in the urban areas than the forested or wilderness areas? Or you kind of are hoping to get information on both?
We're more interested in the urban areas because that's where the harvester ants are harder to find. Once you get it in natural areas of LA, then you're most likely going to find harvester ants. Although it'd be really interesting if some natural areas are lacking them. And also a lot of commonly used areas also have Argentine ants that might displace harvester ants. But really, like our central question is, how is it that these native species can live in the cities which are filled with Argentine ants? How are they coexisting? If we find out exactly where they are, then that help us give insights into the mechanisms of coexistence. And so, again, having more information about where ants are in LA, even in the mountains and natural areas, is great. But for us, like the most cool, interesting record is, you know, on a sidewalk in someone's driveway in a little city park, because that will be information that we otherwise could never ever get, but is very scientifically valuable.
Thank you all for all these great questions. I'm seeing some good advice from other iNat folks in the chat. For Bettina, some people are like really find it easy to upload when they do the batch uploads from their digital camera and like figuring out where they were by knowing where they were on the trail. Some folks decide to take a picture with their cell phone so they can use the GPS location from their cell phone and then overlay it with the macro photography. I know that Amy in our office does that, and Amy is a really proficient iNat user, or iNatter as we call it. We're gonna move on to our trivia and happy hour. So if you have a beverage of choice, I have some water here in the office, which is my beverage of choice while working in the museum. But hopefully you all have some more fun beverages, whether it's soda or other adult beverages if you're into that. That's great. And then we're going to have more time for Q&A. So if you have more questions, don't worry. But let's head into this ant trivia. I just want to start off with, clearly these ants are having a happy hour themselves. This is sugar water, and this photo was taken by Mohammed Babu in his kitchen in India. He noticed when this ant species, which is a native ant to India, came along and he dropped some milk, he could see the abdomen filling up with milk colored liquid. And so then he decided to do his own like experiment in his own his own house, and decided to try it out with some sugar water and this kind of food coloring, as you're seeing. And he really enjoyed doing this mini experiment and noticed that the ants much preferred the lighter colors, the green and the yellow. and then would go to the blue and the red afterwards, when like there was so many other ants, there was not enough room at the green and the yellow. And I think we have a article, link to this article that Sam's going to share in the chat. Okay, let's move on. Okay, this one's a bit of a like I'm giving you the answer because we already talked about this at the very beginning of the chat. True or false? This is an ant. Please put your answers in the chat. Sophia says false. We got Deanna saying false, false. Some true, some false. Okay, so this is definitely an ant. It has 6 legs, and that's how many legs ants have. And it also has the elbowed antennae, which ants have. But it is imitating a spider, and it has those legs, that same leg shape and design the spider would have, because it's like, yeah, I want to pretend to be a spider. I'm going to get some protection by just looking like a spider. Sneaky, you're right. Hit us with a trick question. That's what I'm trying to start us off with, some of that trickery. Also, it's Halloween, and maybe we've got some like ants dressed up as spiders, and maybe we'll have some other creatures dressed up as other things. Okay, so how many ant species are there in the world? Is it approximately 2,000, 12,000, or 22,000? No Googling, no cheating. We've got some guesses for 22,000. We got some guesses for 12,000. Wow, it's really, really close between those. No one thinks 2,000. Okay. Emily's like, yeah, I'm going to guess the 2,000. Okay, so it's around 12,000 species of ants in the world, which is amazing. There are over 1 million described species of insects, so it's not that surprising that 12,000 of those described so far are ants. I don't know how many more species of ants are undescribed out there. Maybe Terry or Nadia know. I mean, clearly we don't know the answer to that.
I was just going to say, but most systematists, like the people who describe species, are probably guessing if we were able to describe all ant species, it probably would be really close to that ballpark of 22,000.
Awesome. So 12,000 described, but probably close to 22,000 actual. So cool. Thank you. Okay. Where is the ant? Is the ant on the left or is the ant on the right? Both. Ooh. We got a few people saying right. We got someone saying left. We got a lot of different, there are 2. Yeah, there are 2 creatures in this photograph. One of them is trying to eat the other. And one of these creatures is a spider, and one of these creatures is an ant. And the one that's on the left is the spider. And it is a spider that basically imitates the ant species that it's preying on. And it's also that same ant that we were guessing that a lot of you liked earlier, the turtle ant. So this is one of those turtle ant species, the one that had like the man cover kind of like head. And the spider is like, cool, I look like you, gonna pretend to be you, and now I'm gonna eat you. So now we've got spiders dressed up as ants, as well as ants dressed up as spiders. Yeah, it's hard to see where the spider's head is and where the ant's head is, because the spider is like literally like, looks like it's got its chelicerae, the little fangs, right in the neck crease, or the part where the exoskeleton is a little thinner between the head and the thorax, where those 2 body parts meet. We've got some really good things happening in the chat. Next question. Which of these islands is home to native ants? So only one of these islands has native ants living on it. Okay, we've got some Maldives guessing, some Tuvalu guessing, Easter Island, a lot of Easter Islands all up in a row. Okay, no one's guessing Iceland has native ants. Oh, thanks, Alex, right on cue. So this was really awesome. I found this amazing map, which hopefully Sam's going to be able to put a link in about, like, you can look at the whole world and where ants are found and like what native species, how many species of native ants are associated with that region. So the Maldives, 0 ants, 0 native ants. Easter Island, 0 native ants. I did look on iNaturalist and someone had uploaded one observation of a non-native ant though on Easter Island. Iceland, probably not as surprising to folks, no native ants. Tuvalu, 3 species, I think, of native ants. Now I'm like, was it 3 or 4? And I can't see my notes section on my PowerPoint. So just say it's 3 or 4 native ant species in Tuvalu, but all the others have 0. When you have a chance, check out this ant map because it's amazing. Okay, this is a hard one. Maybe you all know the answer. Which ant had their sting described like this? Pure, intense, brilliant pain, like walking over flaming charcoal with a 3-inch nail embedded in your heel. So these words are from a gentleman called Justin Schmidt. He created the Schmidt Index of Pain, and he let himself or was stung or bitten by numerous creatures with venom and described them in these amazing terms. Okay, so we've got a lot of people guessing fire ant. We got someone guessing bulldog or bullet ant. We got bullet ant, bullet ant, bullet ant. So yes, this was bullet ant. This is the most painful sting on the Schmidt Index of Pain. I think it's a 4+. A honeybee, I believe, is a 2 or a 3. Tarantula hawk wasp, which is like the most painful sting in North America, that like blue wasp with the orange wings, they I think were a 3, right below the bullet ant. So yes, bullet ants, very painful sting, not something I'd like to experience. But apparently there's a lot of videos of people who are like, let's go get stung by a bullet ant. And this is a bullet ant right there. Look at that stinger. Look at those mandibles. Yes. Hi, cute ant. Also quite hairy. Yeah, they have a lot of hairs on them for sensing around. Okay. I love mushrooms. So we got a mushroom question in here. What is the common name of the fungus growing on this ant? Is it devil's? These are all real mushroom names, FYI. I did not make any of these up. Devil's dipstick fungus, zombie fungus, swamp beacon fungus, or dead man's finger fungus. Okay, we got, I think this is like the one time that we're going to have consensus, unless someone changes it up and decides to say something else. So everyone so far has said zombie fungus. Devil's dipstick, thanks, Sarah. Devil's dipstick is not this mushroom. Devil's dipstick is one that looks very much like a phallus coming out of the ground, and it's in the mushroom group called Phalloides. Anyway, we will talk about this mushroom instead. So this is a mushroom that infects insects, infects ants like this ant right here, and causes them to act like a zombie. Not all of their nervous system is working very well at this point. And then they go up to the top of a bush or a branch or a twig in this case, and then the fungus erupts out of its body, thereby being at a higher level, and their spores can then be released out to the forest floor and hopefully to land on more ants to make them into more zombies. Also very Halloween themed. See, we're on theme here. Okay, we're getting into we're getting close to some harvester ant questions. True or false? Ants can use silk to weave nests. We've got false, true, true, true. False, false, true. Okay. Yeah. Got some kind of almost split down the middle. Maybe a few more trues. So this is a dear little weaver ant holding in its mandibles an even dearer, littler weaver ant baby, aka larva. And yeah, that's silk. They hold on to the larva and like stimulate it in a certain place to stimulate it to make silk, and then they weave leaves together. And there's amazing pictures of weaver ants doing this. And then the ants work so well together in community to like bring the leaves close enough so then one ant holding the baby larva can like weave the two leaves together. And I got to see this for the first time when I was 14 while I was in the Philippines visiting my stepmom's family, and it blew my tiny mind. I didn't know I was going to be an entomologist at that point, but it was amazing. Check out weaver ants, loads of amazing pictures on the internet. Okay, last few questions. In Los Angeles, about how many ants live in an average harvester ant colony? And this was specific to Pogonomyrmex californica. And let's see what folks are going to guess. We got 200, we got 2,000, we got a lot of 2,000s. One person with 20,000, 2,000, 20,000, 20,000. I wonder if Terry or Nadia, I like did some research earlier. I wonder if Terry or Nadia are like, yeah, I know the answer to this. Or they're like, oh, wait, please tell me. $2,000 is what I found in a paper that I found researching harvester ants. Terry, what say you?
Yeah, I think it depends on the harvester ants you're talking about. Like, so it's the ones that we're talking about, the Pogo californicus. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah,
yeah.
There's some harvester ants that you need a backhoe to dig them up. You know, that are huge. But Pogo californicus, I can believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually got to go out with a group of folks to Anza Borrego, and we took a aluminum cast of a harvester ant nest. And I can't remember if it was Pogonomyrmex californica, but it wasn't that deep and that big. But check out the pictures of some of these nests that folks have found. Okay, I think this is our last question. How do horned lizards eat harvester ants without getting stung? With a knife and a fork, wrap them up in a bowl of spit, bite off their stinger, or do they squirt blood in their eyes? A lot of people saying bowl of spit. Wrap them in a bowl of spit, squirt them in the eye with blood. Yeah. Oh, someone's unmuted. Right. If we could get that muted, that would be great. Yeah. So harvester ants can squirt blood out of their eyes, some species, to protect themselves from predators. But in this case, that was a...
You mean horned lizards? You mean horned lizards can squirt blood? Okay, you said harvester ants can squirt blood.
Okay, if we could mute, whoever that is, if they could mute themselves, that'd be great. Yeah, I misspoke. It is harvester ants are the ones not squirting the blood. It is horned lizards who are squirting blood out of their eyes. But in this case, how do harvester ants make sure, how did horned lizards make sure they don't get stung? Yes, they have a bowl of spit, mucus, and that's how they protect themselves from getting bitten or stung, because harvester ants, you saw those big mandibles, they can absolutely get bitten as well as do the stinging. So that is it. Time to carry on with questions for Nadia and Terry. Please type them in the chat, or we can also, I'm gonna stop sharing so that I can see everyone. And yeah, we could have questions in chat, or if you want to ask it out loud, we can do that too.
I'll start it off with a question from Sophia in the chat earlier. Can ants see color well? What is their color vision like?
Oh gosh,
Yeah, I don't.
that's a
I don't
good
know.
question. Um, I think as I'm familiar with studies on other insects showing how much color vision they have. Like, so ants or insects that are really known to have like high visual acuity, like flies or some kinds of flies or dragonflies, they actually have color vision in like 5 different kinds of axes rather than your, frequency ranges, unlike the 3 kinds of sensors that we're known to have as people. I am not aware of a study on ants. There might be a study, but I'm not entirely sure. Usually those studies are done on insects that tend to have larger eyes because the way that would be done, or you could do behavioral things. And so there might be an answer, but if there is, I don't actually know. And I like to think I know things about ants. So, hey, a good question.
I have a question. What do you call the ants? I don't know which type of ant it is, but they're so tiny that I can barely see them with my eye. Are there any kind of ant that can be so tiny? Because I've seen some that are so small.
Yeah.
Compared to other ants.
Cool. And so you've seen these lately around LA and like in your houses and outside and stuff.
And they're I've seen them together with regular size ants, what I call regular. I don't know what size a regular ant is, but the more common ant that I see. And then right next to him, it'll be walking alongside it. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so much smaller.
Yeah, so the ones that you see all over the place that we think of as regular ants that I grew up in LA as regular ants, are the Argentine invasive ants because they've been here for many decades. And so there's a new invasive ant in town. The scientific name is Brachymermex patagonicus. A common name for it is the dark rover ant. And like Argentine ants, they are an invasive species. And they've been documented in LA in the past 2 or 3 years and are clearly becoming more abundant. And the more I talk to people and hearing from the museum reports, it's like, oh, they're all over LA and they're really, really tiny. And so that's my best guess what you're seeing. There are some native ants like that too, like Monomorium minimum. And so the name is minimum, which says how small they are, right? Are also that tiny, but it's far more likely the dark rover ant, which is a new one in town. And so it'll be interesting to see if the dark rover ant replaces the Argentine ant over the coming, years, perhaps.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There was a question from way earlier back. How active during colder months are the harvester ants?
That's a great question. And the answer is they really slow down when it's cold. And so harvester ants generally do well when it's hot and sunny out. But they do, when it's still warm, then they'll come out. And so what's great about right now is we just had a bunch of rainfall and then it's going to get super hot in the next few days, like up in the 80s. And so they'll be active and redigging out their nests. And probably up through the weekend, we'll have a really good level of activity. And so they will, so in the winter, like it's probably not even worth your time trying to make observations for this project. But in the spring and as summer hits, then they'll really be coming out again. And so we have another couple weeks of activity for the harvester ants before they basically shut down for the winter.
Timothy wants to know, what about fire ants? Are there any native fire ants?
Yeah, there is one native species of fire. So the invasive fire ants that we see most commonly here are Solenopsis invicta, what some people call the red imported fire ant because it came from somewhere else. There is a native fire ant, and it's called just simply often, like the common name is actually the native fire ant. And that's Solenopsis xylani. And actually, they are very hard to tell apart from the invasive ones. And so if you just see a mound of fire ants, you basically need to take a hand lens or a microscope to really tell the difference because the nest looks the same and everything. And so once a colleague of mine came in from out of town because he was collecting microbes living inside the colonies of these invasive ants. And I said, oh, we should go up to the cemetery up in Altadena because I saw them everywhere. There's a ton of those invasive ants. We got to that cemetery. He went to every single mound, and those were all the native ants. But to me, they looked exactly the same. I had no idea. I just looked at them and assumed they were invasives. So you can't really tell if you have a native or an invasive fire ant, although probably most of the ones that you find will probably be the invasive ones.
Cemetery ants, very on theme for Halloween Harvester Hunt. Just say.
And Sarah wants to know, will past harvester ant observations be retroactively added to the iNat project?
So the goal is to use data that is collected within the observation period, which is, as a reminder, between October 30th and November 13th. But if we unfortunately have a low turnout of data points, we will extend outwards to retro observation.
Yeah, I mean, so when we're giving awards for participation, we're basically starting from the launch of the project. But the research question is going to make avail of all the data that are available to us. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I know, Sarah, you're in the top 10 harvester ant observers for iNaturalist because we looked, and you were on the list. I'm sorry if anyone else is on that list, and I'm missing calling you out as an awesome harvester observer.
I think for people who are absolute rock stars on iNat and are contributing, that we'll be sure to be in touch with you, and we definitely. And yeah.
In the chat earlier, Bettina asked a question about the harvester ant sizes. I believe it was either Nadia or Terry that answered, but that there are different ant sizes in the colony, and it might be useful information for everyone in attendance to know.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Earlier in the chat, Bettina asked about the different sizes of harvester ants in one colony. And it would be cool if either you or Terry could describe that and why that is, so people know what they're looking at when they go out to hunt for ants.
Yeah, so I could talk about this a little bit, but I think it would be best if Terry added some detail at the end. There are different, there's different ants with different jobs within the colony, so they're different sizes based on what they have to do. We are only having observers look for workers, I believe we agreed on, because it might be difficult to distinguish between other species when they're at different stages. But Terry, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. So I mean, so the ants are different sizes, and all the workers are different sizes, and so sometimes you have big ones, sometimes you have smaller ones. And for the purpose of the project, if you find an ant of any size, then those are data that we could use. And so some kinds of ants have all the workers are about the same size, and that means they're monomorphic. They're all the same size. But some ants have a range of sizes. We call them polymorphic. And so they have big ones, little ones, middle ones. And so harvester ants, even the small harvester ants, look a lot bigger than say the most common ants that you typically see. And so any of those observations are useful. But yeah, so big ones and little ones all have, different roles in the colony, to be sure.
Thank you, Terry and Nadia. Lorena has a question in the chat. I don't think any questions are silly questions, so I'm not going to read that part. But can I collect harvester ants for my kids' ant farm? I know that's what they supposedly sent us when we set up our ant farm, but would I be causing harm by collecting a few for the ant farm?
I think as a general rule, it's not recommended to take anything from nature. We try to leave things as they are, if not better. So taking from the environment, not recommended. I would definitely ask if they don't do that.
Yeah. So I'll just add on to that. So the ants that you get when you order from Uncle Milton's are the exact same ants that we're studying in this, which are California harvester ants, Pogo californicus. So it's the same exact species, and they have colonies in the lab that they raise to harvest those ants from. And so, I mean, if you do collect these ants from the field and put them into your ant farm, if it's a huge colony, you take a few ants, I don't think that's a major issue, but they're probably only going to live a week or two, just like the ones that Uncle Milton sent you. And so people who raise ants, and I don't recognize anyone on here. If there is anyone who's like an ant enthusiast who raises ants, for hobby or for a living. And so if you do that, then you want to make sure that you have a whole colony and you know a little bit about keeping those colonies. Yeah, so I think the whole ant farm thing is really sad, where they ship you ants knowing they're going to die. They will never survive unless you have a colony with the queen and they have brood to take care of and stuff like that. And so, it's a lesson in toiling and death, I guess, when they do that for kids. Yeah, but if you wanted to raise a whole colony of ants on your own, then I could give you some advice on that. And there's cool chat boards and websites about raising ant colonies as pets. And I could get you hooked up with that. But that's, that's like having a dog in terms of the level of commitment required.
Yeah, we have some harvester ants in our nature lab. And we got the colony from a person in New Mexico who also designs ant exhibits. And they are really, 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 really hard to care for. And one of the colonies collapsed, and we ended up getting another one more locally. But we have trained live animal keepers who, this is their job, to make sure that all of our live animals are getting the best possible care they could. And also we're doing it very much with the intention that these animals are there to help spread conservation knowledge and awareness. And so we don't take putting anything in captivity lightly here at the museum. And majority of our creatures are captive for a reason, because they have been injured. So we have some injured animals that have come to us, or when our rattlesnake was actually confiscated from someone who was illegally had a rattlesnake. So, and then they get to come live with us, and we take care of them, and they become animal ambassadors to share that conservation message with our public. Great question, Lorena. Thank you for asking it. Juniper, the rattlesnake. Yep.
All right, and I'm trying to find the question. Emily asked, wouldn't new ants being added cause some kind of conflict within the colony?
Oh yeah, if you were to take if you have a bunch of ants that were provided to you, and then you get ants that you collected from outside and brought them into the ant farm, then they would go to fight to the death, and it would be really, sad and ugly, and they'd kill one another, stinging. And so whenever you take ants from separate colonies, then they don't get along. Except for Argentine ants, because all of Los Angeles is just one big, huge colony of Argentine ants, which is a whole other interesting story.
I have a question that just came, but I think someone just unmuted. Maybe I'll let them ask it. Maybe it's the same question.
I was going to ask, what is the biggest ant that we have in California?
My best guess would probably be a carpenter ant, because carpenter ants get really, really huge. Leela's like, yeah.
Yeah, when I was in undergrad at UC Riverside, we would go out to get to meet more of the insects from the Southern California region. And I remember I'd seen harvester ants, but I remember finding a colony of carpenter ants. I was like, oh my gosh, that ant is literally that big, which is really hard to tell how big versus the camera. But yeah, they are large for Southern California. However, there is another thing that people, or it's called an ant, a velvet ant, but a velvet ant is actually a wasp, not an ant. I see a lot of nodding, so we got a lot of nature knowledge on this. Everyone knows that already. But I think a lot of the general public are like, whoa, cool, that's a huge ant. It has no wings. It's very furry. Also, there's a species called a cow killer, which they're like, oh my gosh, is this gonna sting me and kill me? Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, it's a better answer to this question is this ant, right? By the way, which was collected from IKEA. Anyway.
Okay, seems like we're winding down with questions. We had the program go to 7:15, so we had enough time for questions. I know some folks have already logged off and said goodbye, but it has been so fun getting to hang out with other folks who are super into ants like we are. Right before Halloween, ants are very Halloween. They are on trend, on theme. They dress up as spiders. Spiders dress up as them. They hang out in cemeteries. They become zombified by fungus. So yeah, Halloween ant time. Thank you all for joining us. Feel free to message or in Instagram to Terry. And yeah, Terry and Nadia can answer more questions. And hopefully you go all out and get lots of harvester ant pictures this weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.